When listening to these touching stories of sincerity from around the world, especially famous people, it will help you and your family have interesting entertainment minutes, sometimes bringing valuable lessons to help you and your children become better and happier every day. In the Storytime Inspiring Stories series, we will explore together the surprising life slices of famous people. It can be the journey from nothing to the top of a star, the painful but valuable fall, or the decisive moments that change their whole life. Each story is not just a biography, but also contains profound lessons that help us look at life from a different perspective. Let's watch and listen to the untold stories, because sometimes their stories are the strongest source of motivation for you. Today our story will be about Sylvester Stallone. Under the soft lights, the showroom floor reflects the splendor of luxury cars, each one like a work of art. This is not just a car dealership, but also a symbol of class where if anyone has to ask about the price, they probably don't belong to this world. In the middle of that sophisticated space, Nicole Harrington stands firm, her sharp eyes scanning every corner of the showroom. As the new general manager, she has achieved this position not only through her ability, but also through her reputation as an uncompromising, professional, decisive woman who does not accept any negligence. But today, a big lesson awaits her, a mistake that could turn her career upside down. With a keen eye for real clients and zero patience for snobbery, this Beverly Hills dealership is not a playground for Instagram celebrities or 20-something dreamers. This is a place for high-end clients, those who sign contracts without blinking. Nicole adjusts the cuffs of her perfectly tailored blazer, her sharp gaze scanning the space. Everything is running smoothly. A sales rep chats with a couple fascinated by a Lamborghini Urus, while another ushers a businessman in a suit into the finance office. Order is maintained. The process is proceeding exactly as she expects. But in a moment, an unexpected event will test her judgment to the limit. The door opens and a man walks in alone. Something is wrong. Not that he looked bad, but he was clearly not the type of customer who frequented the showroom. Jeans, a frayed leather jacket, dark sunglasses, a contrast to the expensive suits that usually grace the showroom. But what caught Nicole's attention wasn't just his appearance, but the way he moved, so calm and confident, as if he had been in hundreds of places like this without ever questioning whether he fit in. Her eyes narrowed slightly as he walked toward a vintage red Ferrari Testarossa, sitting proudly near the entrance. A collector's piece of art, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if he was actually there to buy it, Nicole would be the one to decide whether or not that would happen. This wasn't something anyone could touch at will. Nicole let out a short breath, her sharp gaze never leaving the man. She'd seen this guy before. Looks rich, acts rich, but has nothing on him except attitude. She waited a moment, telling herself he might just be admiring, but when she saw his fingertips lightly trace the edge of the Ferrari's hood, she didn't need to think any further. This was going to be a problem. Nicole straightened her posture, her shoulders squared, and strode toward him. Her high heels clicked softly on the polished showroom floor, each step confident and controlled. But what she didn't know, what nothing could have prepared her for, was that she was about to make a bigger mistake than anything she'd ever imagined. Nicole's face remained calm but firm. She had seen too many men like this. Men who came in, touched things they shouldn't, asked a few questions, and then left without spending a dime. But this man didn't acknowledge her presence. His fingers slid slowly down the side of the Ferrari, as if tracing a distant memory. When he reached the emblem on the hood, he paused for a moment, then let out a soft sigh that was half nostalgia, half regret. Nicole squeezed his fingers, then said firmly, "Excuse me, sir." The man turned slowly. His sunglasses hid his expression. Nicole kept her voice polite but firm. She didn't know who he was, but apparently she was about to find out, in a way she hadn't expected. "I'm the general manager here. Do you need any help?" Nicole kept her voice professional, but her eyes never left the man in front of her. He was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly before speaking in a low, slightly husky voice that carried an odd familiarity. "Yeah, nice car. Do you have a '72 Daytona?" Nicole's patience was short. A Egayezer Kilan Sajet Venketo Ferrari Daytona? This was not the casual question of a connoisseur. Anyone who was serious about buying one would know that this was not the kind of car that could be found on a showroom floor, ready for someone to come by and test drive. She tilted her head, her tone sharpening. We don't usually keep vintage cars available for walk-ins. The man shrugged, completely nonchalant, as if her answer didn't bother him at all. Oh, just asking. Nicole didn't need to hear anymore. She was used to this trick. A guy would come in, ask about a rare car, and when told it wasn't available, immediately launch into a tirade about how rich he was, who he knew, and how he could find it cheaper somewhere else. She gave a polite smile, her lips pursed. If you really want it by, I can arrange an appointment with our specialist. The tone was professional, the perfect intonation, not too stiff, but enough to set the boundary. But instead of agreeing, the man just let out a low laugh. It was at that moment that Nicole felt a flash of discomfort, not because of what he said, but how he said it. The overconfidence, the dismissive shrug, as if she was the one wasting his time, not the other way around. There was a hint of amusement in his voice, as if the whole situation was amusing him. Nicole crossed her arms, her eyes sharp. What's so funny? The man tilted his head slightly as if assessing her. No, no, I get it. He waved a hand dismissively in the air. I didn't look like her type of customer. Nicole didn't confirm or deny. He wasn't wrong. The jacket looked like it had been around for years. Not tailored. The jeans looked well worn. The boots? Definitely biker style. Not someone shopping around a showroom for a supercar. She kept her tone professional, unaffected. We tend to cater to a certain type of clientele, you know. There was a long pause. Then suddenly he smiled. A smile that made Nicole wary. His smile wasn't a smirk or a challenge. It was sincere, almost friendly. I understood. Then he turned back to the car, his hand running down its shiny body again. It was the end of the line. Nicole felt her patience run out. Sir, I must ask you not to touch the car. The man held up his hands in surrender, his tone absent-minded. Calm down, I was just looking. That was enough. Nicole took a step forward, lowering her voice, each word clearly emphasized. This is a luxury car dealership, not a museum. If you just look, I will have to ask you to leave. The man let out a soft sigh, half helpless, half frustrated. He shook his head, adjusting the hem of his jacket. Okay, okay. He turned as if to leave, but then stopped. By the way, may I take a look at the Aston Martin in the back? Nicole almost laughed. He was wasting her time now. She gestured toward the door. Sir, I am asking you to leave immediately. But before he could respond, a murmur began to spread through the showroom. The atmosphere changed. Nicole noticed her assistant manager, Greg, standing a few feet away, his face drained of color as if he had just seen a ghost. At the front desk, the receptionist put her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Before Nicole could process what was happening, a deep voice echoed through the showroom. Mr. Stallone, I'm terribly sorry for the delay. Her stomach clenched. She turned slowly, as if to delay the inevitable. Robert Tanner, the regional director, was striding toward them, his arms outstretched in a respectful gesture of welcome. And at that moment, everything clicked together in her head. The man she'd just asked to leave the showroom wasn't some random person. He was Sylvester Stallone. And worse, he wasn't just a customer. He was the new owner of the dealership. The silence was deafening. Nicole's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process the truth that had just hit her like a punch in the gut. Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone. Standing right in front of her, and she'd just treated him like a random passerby. Nicole's throat was dry. She didn't dare look at anyone, but she could feel the eyes of the entire showroom on her. Robert Tanner, the regional director, clapped Stallone hard on the back, smiling too brightly. We're so honored to have you. I apologize for any misunderstandings. Nicole just wanted to disappear right now. Meanwhile, Stallone was still standing there, his hands in his coat pockets, looking completely at ease. He just nodded, as if this was nothing to worry about. But to Nicole, it was a disaster. Then Tanner turned to her. And in that moment, Nicole knew she had to face the consequences. Tanner's expression was a mixture of panic and trying to stay calm. Nicole, his voice was strained. Can you explain this? Nicole couldn't think, couldn't move. This wasn't just bad, it was really, really bad. I, I don't know, she stammered, trying to find the words. I pointed, but Stallone raised his hand, cutting her off. No, no, she was just doing her job. His tone was calm, even amused. Taking care of this place. That's a good thing, right? Nicole blinked. Wait, he's not mad. Tanner let out a nervous laugh. Right, right. Of course. But, Miss Harrington is one of our best managers. I promise this is a misunderstanding. Nicole swallowed, her heart still pounding. She never thought this day would turn out this way. Nicole couldn't read Stallone's expression. He wasn't angry, but he wasn't completely over it either. His eyes studied her, as if considering something. Then finally he spoke. So you're the one running things here? Nicole nodded quickly. Yes, sir. I was recently promoted. Stallone made a low, low hum. It's been a long time since anyone told me to get the hell out of here. The room is silent. All eyes are on Nicole. She opens her mouth to apologize again, but Stallone holds up a hand. A stop sign. I get it, he says simply. She thinks I'm just some guy here to waste her time. She has principles. She doesn't let just anyone walk in and do whatever they want. That's good. Nicole wasn't sure where this was going, but Stallone continued. But what if I were a real client? A guy dressed casually but willing to spend a few million here? You'd send me away just like that, right? Nicole's stomach clenched. He was right. She had judged, assumed, decided who he was with a single glance. She hesitated. I thought I was defending the agency's reputation. Stallone's lips twitched, a fleeting smile. That was the point. She wasn't defending the agency. She was defending her idea of who deserved to be there. The words hit Nicole like a punch. She felt her face burn, her throat dry. She wanted to argue, wanted to explain, but she couldn't because he was right. Throughout her career, she had prided herself on being sharp, efficient, decisive. But maybe that had also made her too rigid. She looked at a living legend, a man who had built his entire career from nothing and thought he was nothing. But before she could find the words, Stallone turned to Tanner. We need to talk. He lowered his voice. Find me an office. Tanner nodded so quickly that he almost tripped over his own feet. Of course, sir. This way, please. Nicole stood still, watching them walk away, her heart still pounding in her chest. Was she about to be fired? Or worse, something worse waiting for her? The weight of the feeling pressed down on her like a vice. The showroom, once a symbol of sophistication and absolute control, was suddenly unfamiliar, almost hostile. People were looking at her, her employees. They were whispering, exchanging secret glances. But Nicole could tell what they were thinking. She had just embarrassed herself, and not just in front of a customer, in front of a legend, in front of the new boss, not just the staff, in front of Sylvester Stallone, the new owner of the agency. Nicole forced herself to take a deep breath, keeping her posture straight, but inside her stomach was churning. What was going on in that room? Was Tanner frantically trying to protect her? Or had Stallone just decided to fire her without a second thought? The minutes of waiting stretched into hours. No one spoke. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, waiting to see what would happen next. Then the office door swung open. Stallone stepped forward, his hands still in his pockets, his face completely unreadable. Tanner appeared right behind him. His face was flushed, his eyes darting, as if he didn't know where to look. Nicole held her breath. This was the moment. Nicole's throat tightened. This was it. She clenched her fists, bracing herself for the worst. Stallone stopped right in front of her, watching her for a brief moment. Then in the same calm, slow voice as before, he said, "Come with me." Nicole hesitated, then nodded. Each step was heavy as she followed Stallone through the showroom. Everything suddenly seemed too bright, too empty. She could feel the employees' eyes on them, curious, cautious. They moved to a quieter corner of the showroom, where the lights were softer, away from the curious whispers. Stallone stopped in front of a shiny black Aston Martin DBS Superleggera. He ran his hand lightly over the smooth surface of the car, his gaze thoughtful, as if he were thinking about something other than the perfect paint job. You like this car? Stallone asked, his voice low but not probing. Nicole swallowed, nodded. Yes, sir. It's one of my favorites. He nodded. Me too. There was a long silence between them, tense but not entirely uncomfortable. Then Stallone spoke. Do you know why I bought this place? Nicole shook her head, confused. I'm not sure. Stallone chuckled, a little nostalgic. Because when I was young, I walked into a dealership like this, and they treated me like I didn't belong. He turned, looked at her, just like she did today. Nicole's chest tightened. This was it. She was done. But Stallone didn't fire her. He just sighed slowly. I understand. You worked your way up, Stallone said, his voice slow but firm. You had to be tough, keep the wrong people out. But the thing is, sometimes she doesn't really know who she's looking at. He takes off his sunglasses, looking her straight in the eye for the first time. Have you ever heard that saying? Every champion was once a challenger who never quit? Nicole nods slightly. Yes. Stallone gives her a small smile. I said that. A wave of embarrassment washes over Nicole, but at the same time, there's another feeling that creeps in with the respect. Not for herself, for him. Stallone puts his sunglasses back on, his tone calm but sharp. She's good at her job, but good doesn't just mean understanding cars, it means knowing how to read people. Nicole swallows, trying to clear the lump in her throat. I understand. Stallone looks at her for a moment, as if assessing whether she really understands or is just saying so. Then he nods slightly. Good. And just like that, he turns and walks away, as if nothing had happened. Nicole blinks. Wait, what's this? So, I still have a job? Stallone paused, glanced over his shoulder. That meant she still had a job. He paused momentarily. Relief washed over her for a second. But then his next words shattered it. Whether she kept it or not, it was up to her. And then he was gone. Nicole stood still, breathing heavily. She hadn't been fired, but she hadn't been forgiven either. Now she had something to prove. Stallone's words echoed not just in Nicole's mind, but burned into her like a scar. She still had a job, but only because he'd given her a chance to make things right. The humiliation was still there, like a slow burn. But slowly another feeling began to rise. A need to prove herself, not just to Stallone, not just to her employees, to herself. She'd spent her career honing her craft. She understands cars in every detail, has a firm grasp of numbers, sales tactics, and even the psychology of high-end customers. But today she realized something she had never really thought about before. And this time, she wasn't going to make the same mistake. She hadn't understood people as well as she thought. Now the dealership wasn't the same. Everything seemed different. Or maybe it was the way she saw it that was different. Over the next few days, Nicole began to make small, deliberate changes. She looked at people differently. When an older man walked in wearing a faded polo shirt, she didn't immediately assume he was just killing time. Instead, she actually talked to him. And by the end of the conversation, he had ordered a brand new McLaren. When a young black man in a hoodie walked into the showroom, she didn't judge. She didn't immediately assume he wasn't a potential customer. She approached him like any other customer, with respect. She wasn't just changing the way she worked, she was changing herself. He was a music producer, looking for his third Ferrari. Every day Nicole was reminded of her mistake, and every day she tried to make it right, not with words but with actions. But even as she changed the way she saw her clients, there was still one unanswered question in the back of her mind. Would Stallone come back? She didn't hold out much hope. He was a busy man after all. He owned the agency, but he also had a bunch of other businesses, movies, branding, multi-million-dollar deals. So when he walked through the door again 2 weeks later, Nicole's whole body stiffened. This was the defining moment. Had she done enough? Hadn't all her efforts been enough to change his mind? Had she proven herself? Or would today be the day she was officially fired? Nicole stood still, watching Stallone walk slowly through the showroom. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't showing any signs of anything. He looked as calm and confident as he had when he first showed up. Then abruptly he turned to her. She'd tried to improve, hadn't she? Nicole straightened her back, her voice firm. Yes, sir. Stallone nodded, his eyes sweeping over her as if making a final assessment. Then, for the first time since they'd met, a satisfied smile crossed his lips. Good? He nodded toward a Bugatti Chiron looming in the corner of the showroom. Now, let's talk about my car. Nicole exhaled, the tension in her chest finally easing. She hadn't been fired. She'd earned her place back. And this time, she wasn't going to make a mistake. The deal had gone perfectly. Nicole handled every detail herself, not because she wanted to make amends, but because she understood what was really important. She didn't treat Stallone like a celebrity, not as a billionaire, but as a client worthy of respect. As the final signature was placed on the contract, Stallone leaned back in her office's plush leather chair. His arms folded, he regarded her, still with that sharp, calm gaze. You did well. He said it, simply but with weight. Nicole felt a wave of relief wash over her. But it wasn't just relief. She felt different, more aware, more in control. Stallone stood adjusting his jacket, ready to leave. But this time Nicole wasn't afraid. This time she knew she was meant to be here. One last thing. Nicole straightened her back, her eyes focused. Yes, sir. Stallone tilted his head, studying her as if doing a final check. What had she learned? She didn't hesitate, not as hesitant as before. That I run this place like a gatekeeper, not a leader. Stallone didn't change his expression, but something in his eyes shifted. He waited a beat, then nudged her forward. Nicole took a deep breath. And that success wasn't just about understanding the product, it was about understanding the people. A pause. Then Stallone nodded, a nod of approval. Now she understood. With that, he turned and headed for the door. Nicole stood still, watching him as he walked through the showroom, as poised and confident as the day he'd first shown up. But this time, things were different. This time, she was ready. The staff bowed to him with such respect that no one doubted who he was. And Nicole? She was no longer just a manager who had made a terrible mistake. She had been tested. She had learned her lesson. As Stallone walked out the door, out of sight, Nicole felt something settle inside her, a certainty she had never felt before. She had changed, and that was worth more than any deal. Judging was easy. Understanding was hard. Nicole thought she knew who deserved to be in the showroom, but she had let her prejudices cloud the truth. She had almost lost everything on a single glance. Everyone had a story that we could never know, and from now on she would listen, not judge. And sometimes the people who seemed the least important were the ones who had the most influence. So before you judge someone based on appearance, status, or your own assumptions, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Because one day you might find out the truth in an uncomfortable way. If this story makes you think, hit like. And if you've experienced or witnessed a similar situation, leave a comment below. Let's talk. And remember, treat everyone with respect. You never know who's really standing in front of you.